about this bill because there's not much more to say about it. It is tinkering. It is no more than tinkering, and therefore we will oppose it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. What I want is what everyone wants in this world, and that is order. Call the honourable member Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This taxation budget measures bill, unsurprisingly, reflects the general priorities of the government's 2012-13 budget. Let me, in my short time, do two things. First, to judge what is in the bill and, more broadly, the budget as presented this afternoon. And secondly, to discern what is missing from it. In judging what is in this bill and the budget, let me compare the National and the Green positions on the stated priorities that provide the overall framework. National's starting point is the three demons that provide the setting for a zero budget. One global, one national, one local. There is the global financial crisis. There is the 2008 national recession. And there is the Christchurch earthquake crisis. These together create a dire situation which justifies a zero budget. And on top of that was the irresponsible fiscal management of the previous government. From that, the government justifies fiscal austerity so that New Zealand avoids the fate of Greece. The bill proposes to abolish three outdated tax credits: Transitional Circumstances Credit, the Housekeeper's Credit and the Children's Active Income Credit. And there are plans to restrict the livestock valuation method for farmers and repeal the 10% voluntary repayment bonus in the student loan scheme. Why does the government have to engage in this kind of tax sleight of hand? Because it judges such legislative changes to be essential to its 2012-13 budget. There can be no other way it can afford it. So what are the main components of such a strange budget? There are four main components to this year's budget. First is the goal of sound financial management. With that as a precondition, the government identifies three priorities: economic competitiveness, public sector efficiency, and Christchurch recovery. New Zealand's outlook, says the Finance Minister, is more positive than most. We are a food-producing economy in a rapidly growing middle-class region. Unlike other developed countries, New Zealand is going through a, quote, moderate adjustment. So long as the government sticks to its balanced economic program, we shall pull through. New Zealanders have shown resilience in challenging times, and this budget supports their aspirations for a brighter future. So let's compare national and green policy on these components. First, sound fiscal management. Rather than slash spending or dramatically increase taxes, National chooses to run larger deficits and curtail growth in public spending. The result is the proclaimed ability to stay on target to a budget surplus by 2015. But giving tax cuts to the richer income earners is not sound financial management. Selling off state-owned assets and borrowing more from overseas is not sound fiscal management. It is a form of fiscal theft. The alternative green budget has sound fiscal management. It recognises what the government does not, that our national economy is afflicted with a structural imbalance. That imbalance is an overseas funded private sector debt driven by excessive consumerism, exacerbated by a distorted taxation regime, resulting in a rising current account deficit and an increasing negative net investment position. The green budget would rest on alternative forms of both revenue and expenditure that reflect three values: sustainability, resilience and equity. The revenue would rest on a capital gains tax, a resource rental on water, increased mining royalties, a temporary levy for Christchurch, a phase-out of ETS subsidisation with a real price on carbon, savings off the absurd roads projects, and increased revenue from a higher minimum wage. Green fiscal expenditure would include reprioritised items, ending child poverty, reinstating training incentives, initiatives for river clean-up, new social housing, extended home insulation, and reforestation initiatives. Consider National's first priority, economic competitiveness. The Green Party agrees that economic competence, rather than a ruthless competitive efficiency, is a sound national goal. But how much and how is it to be paid? With National, having sold off the country's state assets to the tune of some $6 billion, it will put $385 million of new investment in research, science and innovation. The alternative green budget would apply from the savings within its fiscally neutral budget, some $1 billion over the next 3 years, roughly comparable in amount to National's plans. But the way of funding it is different. Green taxation reform would be specifically dedicated to green technology. Consider National's second priority, public sector efficiency. Of course, this is a national goal, shared probably by all parties in this House. But the difference is over what it means. National is amending the State Sector Act, the Public Finance Act, and the Crown Entities Act. It will reduce long-term welfare dependency, supporting vulnerable children, boost skills and employment, reduce crime and improve interaction with government, according to its policy statement this afternoon. The Green Budget already has plans for bringing 100,000 children out of poverty.
Order. Please continue.
And identifies $100 million over 3 years for a start-up fund for clean tech SMEs. Consider National's third priority, Canterbury earthquake recovery. National has committed $5.5 billion over 6 years, about $1 billion a year. The funding has helped in the rebuilding of 75% of the 1,000 buildings that require demolition. Some 13,000 repair jobs have been generated, and 5,000 of the 7,000 homeowners have accepted the purchase offer. So that is some modest progress, though it has not been without pain and not without continuing controversy. But the main problem is how to fund it, because National is funding this through overseas borrowing. Green funding would be a national levy that would generate $5 billion over the next 5 years, also about $1 billion a year. This would avoid the need for further overseas borrowing and greater national debt, and the government prides itself on fiscal prudence. That fiscal prudence is a sick joke. It is a recipe for social inequality and political instability. Finally, Mr. Speaker, let us recognise what is not in this budget, which requires the Taxation Budget Measures Bill. What are the omissions? What is missing in the broader recognition of the true global situation? There is no recognition of a global ecological overshoot, a 50% overshoot with the current human population of 7 billion and the associated resource depletion and biosecurity loss. There is no recognition of the projected growth in human population from 7 to 9 billion over the next 4 decades, a 28% increase, which will also increase the ecological overshoot beyond the 50% obtaining at present. And it ignores the critical part of that overshoot, the increase in carbon emissions, which will also increase the ecological overshoot beyond the 50% obtaining. And it will cause serious and possibly catastrophic climate change, which in turn will cause social instability. This bill, as part of the budget, is seeking an illusory national redemption in a dysfunctional global framework. As the global economy deteriorates, the New Zealand government believes its destiny lies in being more competitive on neoliberal terms. As we head towards the cliff, the government presses down on the accelerator. The global framework is dysfunctional because we focus only on the global economy and regard the ecology as external collateral damage to be remedied. We fail to realise that the economy is part of the ecology and that the global situation will only be rectified if ecological economics replaces the neoclassical economic framework as the guideline for macro policy by New Zealand. Because of these reasons, the Green Party will be opposing this Taxation Budget Measures Bill.
I call the Honourable Member Paul Goldsmith.
I apologise to the